Today we're going to be diving into the world of junk journaling and art journaling with what else but junk mail. Hello and welcome to the Upcycled Design Lab. If you're new here, my name's Cindy and I craft with a lot of recycled and repurposed materials, and today's project is all about relaxing while we prepare our pages for journaling. And best of all, you probably already have everything you need. So the materials and supplies that you're going to need is a junk mail catalog. Hopefully you save yours because they're good for a lot of different things. You also want some sort of way to dry your pages a little more quickly, and you can just use a regular hair dryer. I think they make special tools for drying your art pages and junk journal pages, but you can just use a regular hair dryer. You need some white PVA glue. You're going to want a fairly good-sized paintbrush, and I just have this really worn-out one. You want a dedicated brush for this because we're going to be using glue and a lot of things that are kind of going to mess up your paintbrush. You also want something to smooth your pages with when you're putting them together, and you can get special tools for this as well, but I've found that a regular popsicle stick works really well for that process. To make the actual gesso, we're going to be using some white paint. I have this whole gallon from House Projects left over, but you can also use just regular white acrylic paint. You also need some baking soda and some more of the white glue to make the mixture. The other ingredient that I found in the recipes that I looked up was cornstarch. But I don't have any cornstarch. I actually substituted baby powder in my experiments, and it seemed to work just fine. I've got a couple bowls here to do the mixing in. You may want to sift your dry ingredients just to make sure that your gesso mixture isn't lumpy. I've got a can here for some water. And the last thing you need is some sheets of paper to protect the pages that you're not working on. So I just have these sheets that are saved. They're the backing from contact paper, but you could use any kind of paper, parchment paper or newspaper, just something to stick between the pages as you're working. So the first thing you want to do is select your catalog, and I've worked with catalogs that had thicker pages and thinner pages, and this will really work on any of them. And the first thing I like to do is find the center of my catalog so that I can make sure that the two center pages don't end up attached to each other, because if they do, your journal will have be much more likely to pull apart. So I want to work from the center to the back and the center to the front. And I've gone ahead and I've counted my pages already. And because of the weight of these pages, I'm going to be hooking 3 pages together, and I think that gives me about 5 sets of pages on the back side and 3 extra pages to attach to the back. So I'd like to have a few more pages hooked together on the cover and on the front cover and the back cover, just to make the cover a little bit heavier. So I'm going to grab my little protection pages here, and I like to count out my pages so that I know, so I don't lose count once I've started hooking them together. So I'm just going to start with 3 pages here, and then I'll put in my other protective sheet. I'm going to turn back one of my pages, and then I'm just going to work on this side. So I need to get some of my white PVA glue, and you can water it down if you want to. I like to just kind of have water available to dip my brush in, and that's the way I choose to water down the glue, but if you want to mix in some water ahead of time, you can do that as well. And I also like to stand up when I'm doing this because I like to kind of work really fast and stay loose doing it, and it's just kind of fun to work quickly. And I'm just going to spread the glue. I want to make sure I get it on the edges, out to the edge of the page, and I'm just going to spread the glue out with my brush and coat that whole page. And then when I'm ready, I can turn my first page. And first I smooth it with my hands. And then I like to grab my popsicle stick and just make sure that I'm getting the edges sealed down pretty well. And because I'm working on the back, I'm working on this side. When I move to the front, I'll be working on this side. It just helps your journal lay a little flatter. Your pages are going to wrinkle up and kind of crinkle, but if you work from the center to the back and the center to the front, you have a little bit more even. Your pages will be a little bit more even and lay a little smoother. So once I have one page glued together, I usually use my hairdryer for just a couple of seconds to make sure that there's no wet glue that's going to stick to anything. Your page doesn't have to be completely dry, but I like to hit it for just 60 seconds or so before I move to the next page. So I'm ready to go to my next page, so I'm going to flip my page that I've just attached over. I'm going to count out 3 more pages. Slip in my page protector and repeat that process until I've got all of my pages attached together. So turn on some music and grab a glass of wine or some other beverage and just kind of enjoy this process. You can also use glue sticks if you want to hook your pages together, and I have used them. They work just fine, but I have switched to the PVA glue because I just prefer it. It's a lot quicker. But if you don't like drying the pages at all, you could use the glue stick because then you don't have to use the dryer for this step. So I'm working toward the front now, so I'm going to put my glue on this side of the paper and work that way until I get to the front. And I'm just putting 3 pages together, working really quickly with the glue. And then smoothing the pages with my hand and the popsicle stick. As I mentioned, you don't have to get the pages completely dry, but you do want to pay a little extra attention to the spine here because it will soak up a lot of the moisture just because you're repeating the process so many times. I've got my pages all glued together here, and now we're ready for the gesso step. So I've already gone ahead and measured out some of my items here, but the basic formula is 3 parts of baking soda, 3 parts of cornstarch, and as I already mentioned, I'm substituting baby powder, 1 part glue and 1 part paint, and then 2 to 3 parts water. I like to make my gesso with a little more white paint in it, so I have about 1.5 tablespoons of white paint here. I've got my cornstarch and baby powder measured out already. I'm going to just add a little bit of glue here. And as you can tell, I'm not overly concerned with the measurements. If you want to be exact, you can, but I don't think it's terribly critical to get everything perfect. And like I said, if you want your gesso to be more opaque, you can add more paint. If you want it to have more texture, you can add more of the cornstarch. So I'm going to go ahead and just sort of mix my dry ingredients into my paint and my glue kind of slowly, and then I'll add some water until it's a nice consistency for brushing onto the paper. I think I mentioned I'm pretty new to using gesso, so if you have any tips, feel free to share them in the comments. And if you are a big believer in buying gesso or making your own and you have a different recipe, let everybody know in the comments about that too. As far as I can tell, with my limited experience, this is a pretty good formula for gesso. And I think I already mentioned that I really kind of enjoy the texture that it adds to the paper, and the whole process of applying it to the page is kind of relaxing and enjoyable, and I like getting my hands a little messy and testing the pages to see if they're dry. And so far I haven't been impatient about drying anything, so that's been good too, because I think sometimes you can be going on a project and it's frustrating if you have to stop and wait for things to dry. But for this step, at least, it's kind of a relaxing, and it goes pretty quickly. The gesso dries pretty quickly in my experience. So I think I've got a fairly good consistency. I usually do my cover last, but it really doesn't matter how you want to go about doing it. Again, you want to use some protective sheets to save your surfaces and the pages that you're not working on. Just going to use my same paintbrush that I used for the glue, and there's really no right or wrong way to do this, I don't think. You're just going to spread it on your page, and it adds a little bit of texture, and from what I've read, it helps the paints and other embellishments kind of stick to your paper. And then, of course, for the magazine pages, it is helpful to have a little bit of a white coating to cover up some of the print that's on your pages. So this is the part where I definitely recommend having a beverage and some good music playing and just slapping on some gesso onto all your pages, doing a little bit of drying in between, and just really enjoying building up that texture on your pages. If you're like me, maybe you haven't done a lot of art journaling or junk journaling, and so you don't have a ton of supplies. And that's another reason that I really enjoy being able to use junk mail and materials that I already have on hand. I've really found the process of applying the gesso and working with it and the way that it changes the pages to be kind of an enjoyable tactile experience. Let me know what you're drinking and listening to in the comments, and also whether or not you enjoy this process for preparing your pages. You can check out more from the Upcycle Design Lab in the links below. I'd love to have you join my YouTube family by clicking that subscribe button. And if you'd like to receive the Upcycle Design Lab newsletter, check the description box for a place to sign up for my email. Thanks so much for watching. I hope to see you back here soon in the lab for my next experiment.